Hello, hello. How are you,
I'm,
Mundey?
I'm very good. How are you?
Good. We are live, and so far we don't have anybody joining us just yet. But when we do, I'm going to ask people if they can hear us,
Yeah.
what questions they might have for you in advance,
Okay.
and we're going to take it from there. Are you excited
Yes,
about this
yes,
conversation?
yes, absolutely.
Yes, yes. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I see somebody has joined. So if you are joining live and you can hear us, can you please type that you can hear us, and where you're joining us from? We're just getting started, and
Excuse me.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce myself and what this live stream is all about. My name is Patricia Broocks, and I help single women who are looking to make a move abroad, move out of that procrastination mode and that fear that holds them back into a place of confidence and empowerment so they can finally start living their dream life in a new country. And that really relates to the conversation we're going to have today about stop wasting precious years of your life
Yeah.
doing something that doesn't suit you, right? It's really apropos to this topic.
Yeah.
And today, so that's a little bit about me. I see a couple more people joining. If you can hear us, type yes in the comments where you're joining from so we can make sure that you're getting all of this good stuff that we're about to bring you. Mundey, would you go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, where you are, what you do, why you
Okay.
do it?
Okay. My name is Mundey Young. I am in the south of France. I am a sort of international transition coach, and my job is helping people to navigate personal and professional transitions, major personal and professional transitions in their life.
Mhm. And Monday, can you share a little bit more about why you chose to work with people who are going through major uh, transitions in their lives?
Well, similar to you, I spent 10 years in the expat space, coaching expats. And as my sort of clientele grew and I was teaching people from different places, sometimes people who weren't living abroad, but just were going through transition, I realized that there was a similar thing needed no matter where you are in the world, whether you're living abroad or you're staying at home, that if you're going through any kind of life transition, that you have to be prepared for that, or else the transition will just take over your life instead of you taking over your transition.
Mhm. Yeah. So you saw that this happening with people who would make a move abroad and then they'd work with
Yes.
you, and
Yeah.
how, since they weren't prepared for the transition, how
Yeah.
um,
How much time it
unpleasant.
wasted. Yeah. Yes, it wastes. I think the difference between people who are in a permanent location and people who are an expat is that expats normally have a very limited amount of time. So they're there for, maybe 2 years, maybe three, maybe 1 year. And if you don't have a proper plan for that experience, you'll end up wasting most of your time trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing and actually enjoying your experience. And by the time you figure it out, it's time to leave and go somewhere else. And then you're just keep repeating this same sort of cycle where you have this unfulfillment, like, oh, I wish I would have gotten more out of that experience, right?
Yeah, yeah. So yes, yes. And we've got a couple more people joining us. Welcome to the live. So excited
Yes,
that you're
this is
here.
France
We
from
are,
Florida.
yes.
Yeah.
Transbound Florida, yes. So we're talking today about how
Excuse me.
practical ways that you can stop wasting precious years of your life living a life that you don't want. And Mundey
Yes.
Young is here. She's going to share um, her three-step process, or the way that
Mhm.
she works with her clients through major life transitions so
Yeah.
that they hit the ground running once they are through that transition, or as they're
Yeah.
making their way through that
Yeah.
transition. And I'm going to chime in where I can, and share a little bit about my process
Yeah.
share a little bit about my process about transition
Yeah.
to expat later. So
Yes.
if
Yes.
you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. We will address them. I am not so talented as to multitask, read, and
I'll
facilitate.
read some of the comments for you.
Yes, I'll do
We
my
have
best. I need
Linda
spirit help.
said she listened to prior programs from both of us. Coming to Paris, nice. Nice for a month in January, nice. Looking at different neighborhoods for move-in in 2024. Nice.
Yes, Linda, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you
for
for
joining.
joining.
All right. So I have a sense, Mundey, a little bit about, why you chose this area of transition coaching, and why, because wasting valuable time is not something we'll ever get back.
No.
Have you, help me understand if you've ever experienced a situation where you felt like you were floundering, that you made a big life transition and you were floundering, and I'll leave it there, and I'll ask the next question in a minute.
For me, it was more because I was taught early on in my life that having a clear vision about what you want to do to be able to achieve it. I learned that at a very young age. I would say the biggest part where I understood this like fully was in my business. That when you're transitioning to really create something that your financial stability depends on, the way that you align your professional career depends on, if you do not think about all the steps that is needed to make that transition, you are going to waste a lot of money and a lot of time on things that you could have avoided if you just would have taken some time to actually really understand the depth of the decisions you're about to make and the details involved in the consequences of that decision, right? So for me, it's always not about the decision, it's about the consequences of the decisions that you're making that we have to deal with. And I learned that most in business, doing business for myself, starting a business abroad, understanding that starting a business abroad is very different from starting a business if you're in your own comfort zone, in your own language, in your own culture, right? That when you're starting business, you really have to understand who you're communicating to. What's that like administratively? What's all of the consequences of those things? So I would say for me, that was the biggest teacher, was doing business abroad, that helped me understand the depth of transitioning, especially for career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's jump into your 3-step process about how not to waste valuable years. What is the first thing that you walk your clients through?
So the first thing when someone is making a transition, it's the why, right? So, because France Bound just asked a question, she said, "My concern is once the honeymoon period is over, how to deal with new culture and not feel homesick." So that's a great question, and it goes to part of the why. So because when we move abroad, you're going to sacrifice a lot of things, right? You're not going to see your family. It's not going to be the same culture. You're not going to be in the comfort zone of your same language. You're going to have to learn a whole new system and a whole new way things work. So if you're going to make all of these sacrifices, have this distance from your family, once the view from your terrace wears off, right? Why do you want to be there? Why are you really making this move? What do you think? How is it going to fulfill you? Because a lot of people fall in love with a place, the picture of it, but not the actual living of it. So understanding really why you want this on a very deep level, and how that is going to affect all those major areas of your life is very important before you make a step, understanding your why.
Yes. I can't underscore that enough. That is the very first place that my program starts from. What's your
Yeah.
why? Why are you going to turn your life upside down so completely?
Down.
Right?
Yeah.
And for me, the why is, yes, once you're there, you're going to sacrifice. But even before you get here,
Yeah.
it's hard, right?
Mm,
Doing the things you have to do to get here, to get to your new country is hard. And if you don't have a really strong sense of why, you might throw
mm,
your hands up and say, screw this. I'm not
yes.
doing this.
And lots of
And
people
then,
do.
and then 2 years later, 3 years later, 10 years later, you
Mm,
come back to that dream that you had and you
mm,
realize you've wasted valuable
mm.
years, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And a lot of money. People have to understand moving abroad costs a lot of money too. It takes a major financial investment, emotional investment, and you are not going to have the support group that you would normally have when you're at home with your normal friends and family.
Mhm.
So, I so agree with what you're saying, that understanding and holding on to that why and really understanding is going to be the thing that gets you through those challenges that you're going to face along the way.
Yeah.
We have Maritza. She says, Bonjour. I'm a retired teacher. I'm in Colombia now, planning to visit France soon. Oh, nice.
Hi, Maritza. Welcome.
Maritza, welcome.
Yeah. So understanding their why, and is there a process you take? What is a why look like in as you work with your clients? Is it
So for me, what I need to understand is what's the drive behind the desire to move, right? Where is this desire coming from? Is it because you want to just get away from your old life?
Mhm.
And if that's the reason why, then let's look at what are we running from?
Yes.
So because it just comes with you. So everybody knows you can't leave it. Whatever was bothering you there will end up eventually, like when she says, when that honeymoon period goes away, all that stuff you ran away from will just arrive where you are, because human
Yeah.
beings are human beings, whatever language they speak, whether if they live on the Mediterranean Sea, we all are going to go through the same life challenges, right? Life doesn't, certain lifestyles. Now, if people say, because I want to live a different lifestyle, right? That's something different, right? I moved to France for a different lifestyle, right?
Mhm.
I didn't like the American model, the way they lived. I wasn't running away from my life. I wanted to just live a different type of lifestyle. I wasn't trying to forget um or just leave who I was behind. I just wanted to live differently. I wanted
Mhm.
to have more time.
Mhm.
I loved food. I was a foodie, so I had attraction to the food. So it's making sure that the reasons you're doing something are healthy
Yeah.
reasons,
Yeah.
and that you fix the unhealthy reasons before you make the move, so you don't waste time trying to heal yourself somewhere else where it'll be cheaper to hear yourself where you are, at least enough to handle what you're about to go through abroad, right?
Yes. 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 No, yes. Understanding the reasons and making sure that you are not running from something, but towards
Mm,
something. And I love
yes.
how you put that. I think that makes so much sense. A lot of times it's so much easier to be clear on what we don't like about our current life situation.
Yes.
And we can say we want something different. And maybe we see somebody doing something that looks fun and exciting. And
Mm,
maybe we
mm,
say, that's what I want to do, but we haven't delved down into the deeper reason why. And then
yes.
maybe we even do that thing and wonder why we aren't having,
Feeling satisfied still.
yes, yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So and you do this, now you're working with people who are having major transitions in their lives.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of some of the transitions you've helped people through?
Well, for most people, I work with a lot of freelancers or entrepreneurs. So for most people, especially people who want to live abroad, to free themselves up of like having to find a job, they want to work for themselves, right?
Mhm.
So they have the flexibility to be wherever it is they are abroad, or maybe go back home. So I help a lot of people transition from working being an employee to being the employer of themselves, or more than between 1 and 7 people.
Mhm.
So that's one of the major things, because finances is the thing that drives that scares people the most, drives people the most, and helps people to live the way they want to live the most, right? Money is the underline of all of those things. It gives us the freedom to really enter into what we, or at least to try the things that we want to experience without it like affecting the fridge and our food, or our mortgage payments. And most people, when they, and also dealing with the fears of our friends and family, right? They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're gonna
Yeah.
move abroad, how you gonna do that, how you gonna make money, how you gonna," and they end up putting all of their fears about financial stability,
And are you gonna be
or the
safe? Right?
risking your financial stability, upending your life. All of those things are going to come in. So I think helping people transition financially, career wise, understanding how to take calculated risk, especially when it comes to your
Yes.
finances, is
Mhm.
extremely important.
Yeah, yeah. So I thank you for sharing that and helping me understand a little bit more about who you help and what the challenges are there. So the first part, the first place you enter when you work with clients, the first thing you do is you work on their why. All
I
right.
work on their why. Yep.
Mhm. And the deeper reason, right, that they're
And the
what they're
deeper
running to,
reason.
right?
Yeah. What they're running to. Yes.
Right. And once you've got that established, once they're clear on that, they feel good about that,
Mm.
then where do you take them?
Then we start to build out their vision. So I'm I have a I have a holistic approach. I don't hyper focus on one area of people's lives. That I think you have to think of all those major areas, because they all need to be working together for you to have satisfaction. Because it's like people want to move somewhere, like we talked, and then they don't think about how deeply, like she was saying, missing her family, feeling homesick, how deeply that's going to affect you. So how am I going to, if you're a person who needs support, like you need to feel like you have friends, a social circle, you need to belong to a community, you need to build that into your vision, and that needs to be a goal from the very beginning. So as soon as you get there, you know where you're going to go to meet people, you know how you're going to get involved in the community, you know how you can get involved in the community even if you don't speak the language. Like how are you going to make friends if you're single? How are you going to how can you need to have a vision about how you think about meeting a partner, what that partner looks like, what's that lifestyle look like. You want to move to a country for a different lifestyle, so is that country actually going to give you the lifestyle that you think? And that's something that you really have to break down when it comes to also your health. How are you going to sustain your health? Do you know how the healthcare system works? How much is that going to cost you? How is that different from where you're going to? What does having mental and emotional health look like for you in this new transition? um, Also, if you're a spiritual person, right? Like for me, in the States, it was so easy to have access to so many different types of things. I could go to Baptist church and I could go meditate in a temple all in the same week. But you may live in a small village somewhere and you might not have those options. So how would you maintain your spirituality? So I think building out a holistic vision for your life in detail, and what that looks like, and understanding what you need to feel fulfilled as far as personal growth, as far as career, as far as finances, as far as health, your spirituality, friends and partnerships. If you build out a global vision of that, we take that vision and then we start to pull out everything that you're going to need to feel fulfilled where you're going, and to make
Yeah.
sure that you have all the tools and resources that you're going to need to make that a reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as you described that so nicely, around making a move abroad,
Mm,
as you're working with your clients who are perhaps living abroad already, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
who have been working for somebody else, but want to have the freedom, flexibility of working for themselves.
yeah.
What what are some of the things that people typically don't think about in this holistic approach of a vision for their business or their life
They just don't
around?
think about all those other parts. They just think about the work. People hyper focus on one area.
Mhm.
And they think if I have that, if I get the visa and I get a job, all things are gonna be, or I have contracts and whatever it is that they're imagining. if I have that, it's going to be okay, but it's not going to be okay.
Mhm.
Not on all the emotional levels that you need to feel fulfilled. Your
Yes.
career might be okay, but it's like,
Right.
oh, but I don't have any friends, and I can't do this and that. And how do I meet people? And how do, and oh, I have to do all of these administrative stuff, but I don't speak the language, and I'm afraid to call the people to hook up the internet. It's like you really have to delve deep into your everyday living. Most people don't think about how they're going to live
Yeah. Yeah.
every single day.
So no matter what the transition is, it's connected to all of the other areas of your life. If you don't
Yes.
care for that in the beginning, then you might wind up wasting time, energy, money, feel stressed, overwhelmed, all of those things that can be
What
avoided.
happens is that you get one area that's like a 10 and everything else is like a 2 and a 3. So you're
Yeah.
not going to feel fulfilled if that's the case, right?
So how do you so yeah, so how do you take somebody through this visioning process? Do they do a visioning exercise? Is it a worksheet that you take them through? Help me understand.
So they get a full workbook and we build out a vision for all those major areas, right? We go through each of those areas. We ask, what do you want to, what do you want to, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Who is this new person?
Yeah.
Whatever life you're transitioning to, whether it's abroad
Mhm.
or you're staying where you are, who is this new person that you want to be? Right? Who is this person that you see yourself being in this new transition? And really understanding that on a very deep level. What is that person doing? What do they have from that? But most of all, how does that make you feel? A lot of
Yeah.
people think this is going to make me feel better. And then when it doesn't make them feel better, sometimes they're confused. So you have to really understand, is the thing you're thinking about really going to give you the satisfaction you're looking for? And understanding what actually makes you feel satisfied on a deep level is very important. And when we go systematically through each of those categories and we ask, who do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? How do you want to feel? It forces people to go inside, deep
Mhm.
reflection,
Yeah.
and to really pull out what they really want to get out of this new experience in their life
Mhm.
that they didn't get out of the last one, and to make sure that they're not repeating the same mistakes just in a new place with a new view you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. I like that. I like how because a lot of times we can be really surface. Well, I want this because, well, I think it's going to make me happy. Well, but why do you feel that? Why do you think that that's the
yeah
thing? And I like how also you talk about, well, who do they want to become in this next chapter of their lives? That which is really closely related to the second part of my program,
yeah
which
yeah
is who do you need to become to be the kind
yes
of person who
yes
moves abroad confidently and sustainably? Because
yes
a lot of times we have this idea, this ideal
mm,
that we want to live, and sometimes it's romanticized, as you mentioned before,
mm, mm,
and we don't don't necessarily see ourselves being able to do that thing because, well, the person that we are today has never done this thing
yeah
that we say we want. And so
yeah
that can really hamper progress toward actually reaching that goal that you're going for. And so understanding the qualities and characteristics and beliefs
mm,
of
mm,
somebody who is
mm,
successful in doing the thing that you're going for, and looking at what that means for you in terms of habits that you
yeah
might need to change or beliefs
yes
that you might
ma'am.
need to challenge and
Hmm.
change, can be really hard. And I think it's hearing, what is necessary and
Mm,
working with somebody who
mm,
has the skills to pull it out so you get down to that deeper
yeah
granular level
yeah
is vital in not, again, wasting valuable
yes.
years of your life. Right?
And what people have to understand is most people are looking at the external elements, not their internal world.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's the inner world that's the most important, especially for transitions, because you need to be good whether your circumstances change, right? When you go through any type of transition, there are no guarantees.
Mhm.
So you have to really make sure that what you're doing internally you're prepared for.
Mhm.
right? Because you may be able to find a job, but are you going to be emotionally and mentally healthy enough to sustain that job in a different language and a different culture with people who you might not actually enjoy working with? Like, you might enjoy living with them, but you might not enjoy working with them,
Mhm.
right? Which is my case. Like in France, I never was able to work inside of an establishment, which is why I ended up starting my own business, right? And it's just making sure that your internal self is prepared for the journey you're about to take yourself on, and that
Yeah.
you're not just looking at the external elements about your transition.
Yeah. Yeah. The two things two paths I want to go down. So the first one is a little bit more about this idea of working for a foreign company, working for a company in a country that's not the one you came from.
Yeah.
Had you gotten positions, or
Yes.
tell me a little bit more about what that experience was like and how you came to the revelation that I gotta work for myself.
Um, well, they just have a different way of working, right? Just
Mhm.
like they have a different way of living.
Of being,
So
yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so French system is a socialist system, which I love when it comes to lifestyle, right? I love that I have healthcare. I love that my kids can go to university without me having to sell my house. I like the fact that, there are so many things that a social system gives us a comfort as far as our everyday living.
Mhm.
But that also reflects the mentality of the community. Now, I'm an American, so I come from a culture of individualists.
Yes.
I don't come from a culture of where I need to talk to 10 people for 3 hours for 2 weeks to make a decision, right?
Ooh.
So you have to be, that's what I'm saying. So it's understanding that systems also make a psychological view of the way people manage their their lives, right? So
Mhm.
in France, they deal everything with a collectivity. They make
Yes.
decisions collectively. And I don't know if you ever try to get more than two people to agree on something, but that's a lot of work, you know?
Yeah.
So if you don't have the personality for that, you need to understand who you are, right? So that's why I'm saying it's so important. It sounds like in your program, also in mine, there's a point of self-assessment that you really have to know who you are to make
Mhm.
sure that you correspond with this culture. And if there's parts where some of it is like you 90% there, but in this part you're like, we do not see eye to eye. And for me, that was employment, working inside of a French structure.
Mhm.
And I just wasn't used to the collective mindset. I wasn't used to, because people really have a high priority for um, stability. They get very afraid of anything that rocks their stability. Now, as Americans, we're taught to fail forward, risk it all for your dreams, and sometimes that scares the hell out of most people, though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's understanding your personal philosophies and how that actually mixes with the culture, especially in a company's culture. So understanding the culture of working, what the working culture is like, if you're actually going to be working inside other institutions and organizations, what does that culture look like? Because it's not just about going to your job and showing up and doing what you're supposed to do. You're still going to have
Mm.
to interact with people,
Yeah.
right? There's going to be a hierarchy, and that hierarchy has a philosophy. And would you be able to, that philosophy, how does that philosophy feel for you or work with your philosophy of life,
Right.
right? Or else
Right.
you may feel like you have to erase who you are to fit in to another philosophy.
And which is going counter to a lot of the reason you probably wanted to move to the foreign country in the first place.
In first place. Exactly.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. That helps me and helps everybody understand a little bit more what you were talking about understanding that, oh yeah, I
Yeah.
can't work in a French business because they're coming from a totally different
Philosophy.
place from me.
Mhm.
And that's just, I didn't grow up in this,
I
and
couldn't I couldn't I couldn't be myself, right? In that
yes,
environment, I didn't feel like I could be myself.
yeah, Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
right, and it's just making sure that you can be whoever it is you want to be wherever you are, because
Mhm.
if you can't do that, what'll happen?
Yeah. You'll be miserable.
Unfulfillment,
Right. Yeah.
unsatisfaction, and it won't matter if you got the Mediterranean Sea, 340 days of sunshine. If it's gloomy every day you got to go to work, it's not going to matter, right? So
Yeah.
it's really making
Yeah.
sure you understand what you're getting yourself into when you're
Yeah.
moving abroad, and that's understanding the working culture, especially if you're going to be working for other people. The working culture, what is that like? Understanding it is extremely important.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned with this, the second element, we're going to move to the third in a minute, that with the second element of understanding the vision, right? And
Mm,
going
mm,
deeper into that vision. And you said most people have a tendency to just look at the external elements.
mm.
Um, why would you say that is?
Because it's easier. Because we don't ever want to think we're part of the problem. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's
Because it's
easier.
easier. I think
Yeah,
it's
it is.
easier. I think it's easier, but I think sometimes we just don't even know that we're on the surface,
Yes,
that we're doing the external thing. Like
true.
you were talking about the business culture in
Mm,
France. You
mm,
know,
mm,
maybe you don't even know. You're like, oh yeah, I've got this skill. I can get a job over there. And maybe
mm,
you're not even aware of that. And I think that's the beauty
mm,
of working
mm,
with
mm.
somebody who has had experience like you.
Yes.
Like if you're, you know, transitioning, somebody who wants to move abroad, or somebody who
Mm,
is abroad, for example, and who has been struggling with that work
yes.
environment, and you're ready
Yeah.
to do something different.
Mm.
Having had somebody who has had that experience is invaluable.
It is invaluable.
Yeah.
And I just think that people assume that certain things, external things, will make them feel better. That may not necessarily,
Yes,
right?
and but that goes back to their why, though, right?
Yes, yes. And the why drives you inside. It doesn't drive you outside,
Mhm.
right?
And going
Because
inside is hard.
yeah, yeah, and it's hard, and trusting yourself, right?
Mhm.
Having personal trust in yourself, that's what comes up. How much do you trust yourself? How much do you trust your decisions? How well do you know yourself? And if
And
you don't, yeah, go ahead.
that comes up where, this idea of trusting yourself or not trusting yourself, that comes up
Mm.
when you're looking at your
Ooh.
why, when you're looking at your vision.
Well, what I do is I do take people through a personal like assessment. Like, what are your needs? What are your wants? And then we have to really dig into where those come. What's the root of that, right?
Mhm.
Why do you feel you need that? Why do you really want that? Do you want it because you want the pictures and that looks nice? Or is there something deeper to why you want to have 3 hour lunches? Right?
Mhm.
3 hour lunches are not just about having 3 hour lunches. For French people, this is all about family and community and connection. That these
Mhm.
3 hours is not just about, okay, the food is there, but mostly what it is about this same mentality, this socialist mentality of collectivity, right?
Yeah.
So at a dinner, maybe that's okay for you, but is that going to be okay for you with everything else that you're doing, right? How do you deal with collectivity if you don't, let's say if you're an insecure person or you're a timid person, right? How are you going to show up at those 3 hour dinners if you're afraid to say anything,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? So you're going to spend there 3 hours being miserable because you don't speak the language. And so now you're feeling more insecure, more unseen, more this, and you don't trust yourself to be brave enough to try your French,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
To go
Mhm.
into the boulangerie and be like, je peux avoir un baguette s'il te plaît, like, right? So any insecurities and all of this, if you know you don't have to fix yourself 100%, but it is to understand where you have where you're going to need support. If you're a timid person, if you have insecurities when it comes to certain things, or you don't believe you can learn the language because you're too old, right? Or whatever is driving like things that can show up as blocks. One, just being conscious of them, first of all, helps you. because when they come up, at least you know that you need to get help.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because
not
if you
just,
don't know it's there, yeah.
if you don't know it's there, you can't help yourself. So
Yeah.
I try just to really help people to be very conscious about those elements of their not necessarily weaknesses, but the elements that they have inside of their personality that might hold them back from actually realizing their transition.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. So you've got your why. You worked on your
That's
why,
your
right?
Yes,
You've
vision.
got the vision,
Yes,
and the deeper reasons why, and how they're all connected in the different areas of your life. So
yes.
then, what's the next part of your process?
The next part of my process is the consequences.
Oh, yes, this is what you alluded to earlier.
Yes. Yes. I think this is something that most people don't think about is the consequences. What is the consequences of the decisions that you're about to make? Everybody just sees the good part, the part that they want. But all decisions have consequences. So the consequences is, how is that going to change? Like, just as for example, how is that going to change the relationships with your friends that you're leaving behind? Because your lives are now going to be completely different. That you have to understand what is going to be the consequences of your relationship with your family. What is going to be the consequences on your finances? What is going to be the consequences on your career? Because some careers don't transport, right? If you're a doctor, lawyer, moving to a new country, that is devastation for your career, right? Because you have to start all over, basically, right? So how is that gonna, maybe you're in a financial projection that's going quite smoothly and well. How is this interruption? What is the consequence of that? Of you taking those time that it's going to take to reestablish a life? What is the
Yes. Go ahead.
what is the consequences of just sense of belonging, right? Because in the beginning you're not going to belong. It takes time to belong somewhere,
Yeah.
right? So what is the consequences of all of those things? You have to understand what are the consequences of what you're doing so that you can deal with them in a healthy way without the consequences, that because you never thought about what's the consequence. All you saw was the good stuff.
Yeah. And the romanticized part, right? Yeah. So,
Exactly.
so the third part is understanding the consequences, and understanding the
Yes.
consequences in all aspects of your life. You're making a transition. Perhaps you're moving abroad. Perhaps you're moving out of working for somebody else, and you're going to be self-employed. Whatever that transition is, understanding the consequences to the relationships, to
Yes.
your health, to
Yes.
all of the different areas in
Mental,
your life.
emotionally. Yep.
Yep. Yep. So how do you do that? How do you help that? How do you do that? And then once you have that established, what do you do with that?
Well, what we do is that we build that out into their, basically, we build that out into their strategic plan to get from that vision to bringing that into reality. That, okay, this is going to be the consequences. So if you know you and your friends are going to be apart, but this, let's say there's a particular group of friends that you don't want that to happen. How is that not going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your plan for that
Yeah.
not to happen? Are you going to
Absolutely.
call them every weekend? Are you going to go home every 3 months? Are you going to plan trips together every year? How are you going to maintain those relationships? You need to have that already in mind, because once you get to your new place, you're going to be moving in and putting your internet, telephone, paperwork, all of this stuff. You're going to be busy, right? Establishing a new life. And if you don't have something already in place to keep your connections, right? And you can let them know, like, let's talk every weekend. Make sure we
Yeah.
call each other
Absolutely.
and we talk to each other. And
Yeah.
you can prepare also the people in your life for how you're going to change,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Instead of people like,
Such
oh,
a
you're
good
so
point.
different now, and you talk like this and you do this, and before, it's like, yes, but if I prepare myself, I can also prepare the people
Yes.
around me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that touches nicely onto the third component of my program, which is the planning part, right? It's
Yes.
about closing out your old life in your current country, starting up that new life in your future country, and making sure that you have a plan so that you're actually living your why, right?
Mm,
And part of
mhm.
that, I often say, is okay. So you're going to be, 1,000 miles away from people maybe that you
Yeah.
see every day.
Yeah.
What does that look like when you're abroad? Make the plan before you get here
Yeah.
because yeah. So
And
we've
it's
got
also
some.
your parents, like aging parents,
Yes.
right? If your
Mhm.
parents are of a certain age, what if something happened to your parents? How are you going to, especially if you don't move abroad with a large amount of money, right?
Mhm.
If an emergency happened and you needed to get to your mother or your father or your sister or your brother, how are you
Mhm.
going to handle that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So
Mhm.
having contingencies and thinking about the strings attached to you. Most people, when they move, they think it's just going to be themselves. It is not. You have a whole community attached to you,
Mhm.
right? And thinking about managing that is also an important part of the process. Sorry, I
Yeah.
see you were going to
We
read
got
some
some
comments.
some
Go ahead.
questions. Yes, we got some comments here. So we got France Bound who has said that looking at different lifestyle, Patricia Mundey. So that's a great
Thank
comment.
you.
We got Jay Jones who has a question. I want to move to France too. Can you help a guy also? So I'll speak
Yes.
to that. I have my program is for single women. However, I do offer one-on-one coaching. So absolutely, that's not
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
the
yeah,
question.
yeah.
And
And
I
I
know,
and I don't I work with everybody. I don't have a female, male.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
work with everybody.
And I think though, I think one of the things that you said that you're doing is working with not only people who are moving abroad, but people who may be
Yes.
transitioning as they're wherever they are, I think is how you put it, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Teresa says, Bonjour, I've worked successfully with Patricia. I moved to France. One obstacle for living really confidently is that I don't feel like myself in France. Does that eventually change? I
Great
guess
question, Teresa.
I guess it would be to understand what is that self and what part of it do you think is being rejected by the culture, right? And it's finding
If
that.
that's even the question, though, right?
No, but I think when people feel like they can't be themselves, it's like something about them that they feel that this culture. But I don't want to put words in her mouth. So, Teresa, I'll ask you, why don't you feel like you can be yourself? What do you feel? Is it because you think the culture rejects part of your personality, or it limits your personality?
And I want to tap in here too, as she comments. For me, feeling like myself in French
Mm,
is, I think it's getting better for me
mm,
in terms of being able to advocate for myself, being able
yes.
to be the strong person I was as an
Mm,
American who had lived 51 years of her
mm,
life
mm,
there.
mm,
And for me, it's getting easier. It's getting, I've had a call with a telemarketer, and they were
mm,
kind of rude, right?
mm,
And
mm.
I gave it back to them in French, right? But a couple
Yes,
years ago,
I would
that
have done that.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. So I think for me anyway, Teresa, it's getting a bit easier as time goes on, as I'm starting to just feel like, yeah, this is home for me. So
yeah.
and Teresa, I don't know if you want to clarify, for Monday, and Monday, you can go ahead and share what you were going to say.
So what I would say is we all go through this transformation, right?
Mhm.
Who you are is going to be very different now because you're in a different place, a different culture, a different experience. So I would say when it comes to self, especially abroad, is integrating that old self with this new self.
Mhm.
How are they communicating to each other and how are they giving them spaces? If you feel that there's part of your voice that has been shut down because of the new culture that you're in, Then the biggest thing to clarify, I feel myself in the country, but not speaking the language. I'm a Philly girl. Well, well, Philly girls might have even a hard time in Cali. Like, I don't know. No, I'm joking. Um, um, I would say that you have to use it as a unique part of your personality, right? As an American, I'm very direct, right? I cackle when I laugh, like it fills the whole room, like you can find me a mile away, because I'm an American. We're loud, we really direct, and sometimes, and it's just that you have to sometimes filter who you are for the audience you're speaking to. It's not that you have to change who you are. It's just like if someone was deaf, right? They can either read my lips or I have to do sign language. Doesn't mean who I am is going to change. It just means the way that they can hear me and understand me is completely different from where I came from. French people need a filter because they're not used to direct communication and they are very emotionally sensitive people. They didn't
They can be direct.
They can be direct and actually rude too, but they don't always handle the same directness back in a
Yeah.
very good way. So, like finding my sense of humor in French, that took time, a long time for
How
me to
long have you
be.
been in France?
I mean, altogether about 17 years,
Oh,
not
wow.
all in one. I left, came back, left and come back, but cumulatively 17 years.
Mhm.
So, it took a long time to reestablish my humor. It took a long time to reestablish how I say something to someone. I can't say it as easily as I would say it if I was at home. But I can say also with different cultures, just traveling the world. Like when I'm in India, it's like when I'm in India, you can't smile at men. You cannot look men in the eye, right? So it changes my behavior completely,
Mhm.
right? That you can't, like in the States, you smiling at everybody, hey, how you doing? Hugs, da, 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 da. But I can't do that in certain cultures because it's just not, it's understanding the audience and how to filter who you are to that audience, but
Mhm.
still being yourself. And really getting to that on a deeper level. So it's like, okay, this is what I understand about the culture. This is what I understand about my personality. And how are we going to communicate to each other? It's just like two lovers who have, when it's nice, but when you try to like talk about feelings, maybe it's more difficult. It's the same thing with a country. It's just understanding how to communicate to each other in a way that the other can understand.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
I was able to get a remote job as an attorney doing only appellate work,
Appellate work.
all digit motions.
Well, congratulations.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about
Yeah.
COVID, right? It changed everything.
Yeah. Well, so Monday, I want to thank you so much for sharing your process. What's the why? You know.
And thank you for sharing
Um,
yours. They're very
yeah.
similar processes.
Um, the getting that clear vision and then understanding what the consequences of this whole change is going to be on in all aspects of your life. Like I said, my program closely mirrors yours.
Yes, yes.
Why, and there is a visioning component to that. I think for me, my why initially was, as you say, it was more external. It wasn't
Mm,
really deeper. I wasn't, at that time, I just knew I wanted to move to France.
yeah.
And I thought, well, I want to move to France because the language was the draw. I really wanted to become
Mm,
fluent in French. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll write my second book there. So it was really about
yeah.
that. Once I got here, however, the why deepened, right?
Yeah.
It was, oh, I want to speak French because I want to have a deeper connection with the people in my community, in my new
Mm,
country, right?
yeah.
That was a deeper reason. I wanted to be in this beauty, right? I wanted to be in a country that was beautiful,
Yeah.
had delicious food and the beautiful language and art
Time.
and all of that, right? But that
Mm,
wasn't something I knew. before I got here. But that's a part of my deeper why.
Yeah.
And then that self-identity piece, as you spoke about as well,
What
who do
Teresa
you,
spoke about, that is a great,
yes,
yeah,
who do you need to become? Because it's
yeah,
to be the kind of person who lives abroad confidently, right? I think that's
yeah,
at its core, right? And I think it's a process. It really
yes.
is
It
a
really is a
process
process. And you
because
have to be so gentle and
mhm,
so kind with yourself through
mhm,
any transition. Like if I say anything is that you need to treat yourself like a newborn baby,
yes,
and
yes,
that you really have to nurture yourself like a newborn baby. You
mhm,
know, it's like first you start with milk, then formula, and then hard food you can chew, right? That you
mhm,
really have to, and you have to be as kind and as loving and as gentle and as patient with yourself as you would with a child, with
yes,
yourself through this process, because
yes,
you're going to grow along with it as the more you learn and observe and understand.
yes. You're going to grow, and the
Excuse me.
process can be so hard that you don't need anybody. You don't need yourself to be hard on yourself, right?
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
you get that
Yes.
from all angles.
Everything else you're dealing with. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that third part of the process for you is, understanding the consequences. For me, my third part is having that plan, creating that plan
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
leaving your old life, starting your
Mine
new
is
life.
consequences and then the plan. Like we got
Yeah,
to understand the
yeah. So,
consequences to make
so
the plan.
we're really kind of aligned in our approaches, and
Yeah.
that makes me feel good. It affirms that we've got
Yeah.
a solid concepts here.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. We are not inventing anything that isn't there, right? It's
Yeah.
just the how the people hear it, right? So like
Mhm,
what Teresa was talking about, that me and Patricia, we basically do the same thing.
mhm. Yeah,
Our personalities are just different,
yeah,
and people hear things differently from each of us,
yeah.
right? And how we filter that message and how people accept and see that is 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 based on how we communicate, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
how we decide to show up to display who we are as far as our careers are concerned or in our personal lives. So I would just keep that in mind, Teresa. It's just figuring out your filter for a Philly girl in France, what that looks like on a deeper interior level.
And you say filter. So you
Yeah,
say you have a filter. Do you have a filter in
I
France?
do. Yes, I do. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a filter when I go to the restaurant. I have a filter when I'm going to the prefecture. I have a filter when
Oh
I'm
yeah,
going,
you gotta have one
right,
there.
right. Any paperwork that I do in France, there's a filter, right? Because in the States, when you complain, you get more service. That's
Mhm.
in France, it don't work like that. The more you complain, the less. First of all, you wasn't gonna get that much service when you showed up. And if you complain, you're gonna get less service than you had when you first got. So
Yeah.
you have to understand, how do I express my frustration and my dissatisfaction, right? With I because I need to get that out, right?
Mhm.
But in the culture I'm in, right? So it's and it's not code switching, right? Because that's two totally different things. Code
Mhm.
switching is something totally different than filtering,
Okay.
right? Is
So
for me is more like translating, not code switching,
okay.
right?
So but it's understanding where the game, right?
Yes,
And showing up in a way that will benefit you.
that I can be heard authentically as myself, but in a
Mhm.
language that the person in front of me can understand.
Yeah,
Code
I love it.
switching is about code switching is about assimilating, right? There's a difference between integrating and assimilating. Assimilation annihilates your personality, that you're trying to be like
Mm,
someone else or
mhm.
like something else. Integration is a mix of me and the culture I'm in, that we integrate into each other. And that's what I'm talking
Yes.
about. that
Gotcha.
I'm still expressing authentically who I am. I'm expressing authentically how I feel. I'm expressing authentically what I want. I am not hiding any parts of myself. The only thing I'm doing is expressing myself in a way that I know that you can hear me and that I'm communicated effectively and that it gets me what I desire. So it's just understanding that those are two totally different things.
Yeah, thank you for making that clear. Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great. Well, I don't see that we have any other questions. Mundey, can you share a little bit about how people can
Yeah.
contact you, work with you, learn more about what you do?
Yeah, they can contact me like you have there on the screen at my website, mundeyyoung.com. On Facebook, it's the same everywhere. It's at Mundey Young Coaching, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whoever, whatever. On all the channels, it's at Mundey Young Coaching. Most people DM me, so you can also, drop me a message on Instagram or Facebook. All those things are monitored. So, whichever way people feel comfortable, they can contact me. Even on YouTube, you can also contact me there.
Okay, great, great. So, if you are interested in working with me and the Carefree Expat Incubator Program, where I help women, single women who are sick and tired of being in a place that just doesn't feel right to them anymore, that makes them feel like they can't be their authentic selves, and they're not sure why they are wasting these valuable years not actually getting any further than they have. I help them to move through that stagnant place and into a place where they have confidence and feel empowered to take the necessary steps so that they can finally stop surviving in a country that no longer suits them, and they can start living and thriving in one that does. And so my program is a two-pronged approach where you've got your online curriculum along with the live group weekly coaching and mentoring calls, where you've got coaching from me, but also the benefit of having other like-minded women who are making a move abroad, or some still who have already made their move still join the calls. And it's a really good environment to be in. So if that sounds like something that can help you move forward, be sure to go to thecouragecatalyst.com, future expat, schedule a call with me, and I look forward to it. All right.
Yes.
So,
well, it's so nice talking with everyone, and I hope we answered all everyone's questions.
yes, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, Mundey. I know that we have something queued up for next year for us to speak again.
Which is like right around the corner.
Yeah, next year sounds like a long way off, but it's not. I'm going to be appearing on your podcast.
Yes.
And we're going to have another very interesting conversation. I don't remember the topic. Do you?
I did have it written down. I didn't know you were going to talk about that.
you gotta preview, right? Give them a taste of something else.
I think we're still working out the details of that, but if you follow either of us on Instagram, once we have worked out those details, and we might draw a bit from the questions that were asked here today, that will always be announced. Any lives, any talks, any webinars, you can find it on our social media channels.
Yes. And so if you enjoyed this conversation, if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe, share this video with your friends. And I really look forward to speaking with you again, Mundey, next year. This has been such a pleasure.
Yes, really. Thank you for inviting me today.
All right. And thank you, everybody who has joined us live. Thank you, everybody who will be joining in the future. All right.
Right. Have a good day. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.